This caucus has said all along that in order to gain our caucus's full support, a plan has to have the right revenue and it has to raise the revenue in the right way. Not only to fund a teacher pay raise and a state employee pay raise, but get resources into the classroom and fund other services that the citizens of this state depend on. Last night's plan didn't do those things. Last night's plan didn't buy one new textbook or put one new dollar into higher education and so many other state agencies that have been cut drastically over the last 8 years. What revenues last night's plan did raise, it didn't do the right way. It didn't restore any of the failed income tax cuts over the last few years that have led to several revenue failures, and it placed the burden of funding teacher pay raises on the backs of those who can least afford it instead of asking the oil and gas industry and the wealthiest Oklahomans to pay their fair share. We have not been secretive about what we've been asking for in this entire process. We have communicated these things to Republican leadership, Republican members, and to the Step Up Coalition several times. So again, the things that we're asking for in any revenue package, a fair and equitable income tax plan that includes an increase in the standard deduction that was given by the federal government and President Trump's tax plan, a restoration of the refundability of the earned income tax credit, and restoring the top income tax rate of 5.25% for those who are at the top, high income earners only. We don't want double taxation of the wind industry or any other renewable energy. Last night's plan, the step-up plan we saw, was a punitive effort by some in the oil and gas industry to punish some competitors, the wind industry, the solar industry, and other sources of renewable energy. We want a restoration of the gross production tax to at least 5% on all wells. And we want teacher pay raises and state employee pay raises, but we want them to be fully funded through fair and equitable sources of revenue. The speaker said last night, and you heard from the Public Employees Association, that a state employee pay raise was offered and that there was an amendment to the bill. Well, anybody who's familiar with the legislative process knows that when the vote is open, there are no amendments to the bill. That's not how the legislative process works. We talked about a state employee pay raise with Republican leadership and with some members of the Step Up Coalition, but they offered no way to pay for that state employee pay raise. We think it's irresponsible to promise state employees a pay raise knowing that the revenue isn't there. Ultimately, what we saw last night was that the speaker currently has a defeatist attitude, saying that everything has to be done by the 5th day of session. We think that's an abdication of his duty as the leader of this legislative body, a legislative body that's in for 4 months. The House Democrats don't have that attitude. We believe that something can be done, and we're ready to do it and get back to work for the people of Oklahoma to find a compromise that's fair for all Oklahomans. With that, we'll take questions.
Well, we just found from ECHLA's that they want to finish the 2018 budget with the cash on hand and likely $40 million in cuts. What's your reaction to that?
We don't think that's necessary. We think that another revenue package can be negotiated and that we can avoid cuts for the 2018 budget. But we've said all along also that the 2018 budget, finishing that, should be our first priority because those agencies are going to run out of money in March or April, and we have to take care of those first before we can write the 2019 budget.
Do you think Republicans are using that as leverage against House Democrats?
The cuts, absolutely. They're threatening cuts, and those cuts aren't necessary right now. We have the opportunity to come together and work on a compromise to avoid those cuts. We're just asking for the speaker to come back to the table and negotiate with us to find something we can all agree on.
What are you hearing about the 2018 budget, the one that you guys took off the balance sheet. What are you hearing about that?
Well, I mean, that's not new. We've known that the 2018 budget was incomplete, and that was due to several things. First of all, the Republican majority passing an unconstitutional cigarette tax led to the 2018 budget being left unbalanced. And then the governor's veto led to the special sessions, but ultimately you can trace it all back to the unconstitutional way that they did the cigarette tax. So again, we stand ready to fix those, to fix the hole in the 2018 budget.
But how are they going to do that? Have you heard anything? How are they going to fix that?
We have not heard from the speaker since last night, and we have made it clear that we're ready. I think we made it clear all day yesterday that even though we weren't supportive of the step-up plan, we were ready to do something else.
Are you at all concerned that the revenue package offered yesterday is log rolling? There seems to be some disagreements on folks on that.
Right. So this legislature does have a tendency to flaunt the Constitution at times, and we know that what the Supreme Court's views are on log rolling. We need to be very careful with that. So I think that it is the most responsible thing to do to vote on each and every measure separately to avoid that issue, because we've seen several revenue measures get struck down, several other measures get struck down because of log rolling, and then we have to come back into special session and fix them.
Representative, you guys talked about the wind, the punitive nature of that. Caucus has talked about how oil and gas needs to pay its fair share, and obviously those are mostly very large companies, very lucrative, wealthiest industry in the history of the world, et cetera, et cetera. At the same time, companies like NextEra and Duke are even larger than the oil and gas companies here in Oklahoma. I mean, those are not small companies. They have plenty of money. So let's just take the $1 per megawatt hour proposed tax or whatever. How do you balance that? The idea that one industry is so wealthy they should pay more, but this industry, an additional tax would be a burden.
Well, the whole problem with the $1 per megawatt hour gross production tax is that it is double taxation on the industry. The oil and gas industry pays gross production tax in lieu of ad valorem. The wind industry and other renewable energy sources, they pay ad valorem taxes that go to the local level, and we've heard over and over, and we know that it's true, that school districts in western Oklahoma are benefiting greatly from the increased ad valorem payments that the wind industry is providing. And so you've probably seen the wind industry offered, we'll pay exactly what oil and gas pays. Because I think everyone in that conversation knows that oil and gas's tax burden is much lower than that of the wind industry and other renewable energy sources in the state.
Just a quick follow-up, though. I mean, I think one of the, and this is not my opinion, this is what has been said in response to that, is that the ad valorem dollars being paid currently, the vast majority of those are being paid through the rebate, the refund program or whatever that the state currently has, right? Continuing exemption.
Mm-hmm.
So the state money. So it seems like these two industries are feuding because the oil and gas industry feels that the taxes they are paying are then currently being used to pay the ad valorem dollars that wind companies should. I'm not saying that this is right or wrong, but is that not?
But this fight is happening. The wind industry came to the table last session and ended all of their incentives. So projects that were in the pipeline are still going to get those incentives, but going forward, all of the incentives are ended. And there is a bill to cap those, which we feel would be just going back on our word as a state on a deal that we had already done. But the fight is one-sided on this. The oil and gas industry is seeking to punish the wind industry simply because they're competitors. And just, Corey, you want to?
I was just saying, to your point, and Trace, yes, that a lot of that is being paid by the ad valorem reimbursement fund, and you'll hear oil and gas say that the state made a bad deal with wind. That may very well be, but you don't always get to reverse out of your bad deals. The state of Oklahoma for years has tried to open itself up to commerce and diversify its portfolio of industry. And we keep trying to add incentives and tell everybody what a business-friendly environment we have, except that when we're too successful, we back away from that and we go punitive to the industry that's already made their financial commitments based on the commitments and the contracts that they signed with the state of Oklahoma. How can we hold ourselves out to truly be a business-friendly environment whenever, if you make a deal with the state of Oklahoma, that isn't the last deal? Quite likely we're going to come back and screw it up a little bit later.